Friends, family, and keepers of the faith, welcome to another Del Boy blog. And as always, I'm going to date stamp this. It's year 4, blog 36, or in legacy numbers, blog number 192. Yeah, we're not very far away from 200. And it's dated the 26th of October, 2025. And it's been a strange, well, it's been a mixed week, but it's been a strange morning, obviously, because what happens is that the clocks change for winter, and my mother was a bit tired yesterday and wanted to go to bed earlier, so she's been in bed a lot longer than we'd like, because we tried to keep it down below half a day in bed and half a day up. What we tend to find is that she wakes up and she's always saying she's tired, but we try to remind her everybody feels that way. When I wake up in the morning, I go, oh, have I got to get out of bed? Another day. And, you know, we always feel like that. But then once we get up, we tend to find we've got the energy to keep going. And I've said this many times, that the one thing that I'm missing in regards to my mother is finding something that will occupy her more than what she's got, because she's got the telly and anything that I want to record and show her, and there's all of the channels, and there's Heartbeat and all of that sort of stuff, and she's got the paper, but I've always found that even at my age now, if I read a lot, I fall asleep. And we tend to find that early on, she's sleeping, you know, during the morning and the afternoon, and then she doesn't want to go to bed. She gets awkward. We call that word awkward, because she goes, no, I don't want to go to bed yet, want to stay up, all of that sort of stuff, until she realizes that she's got to have the energy to walk from room to room. And then there's all the washing and putting, you know, nice softening cream on her, and barrier cream for, you know, the obvious bits, for her pads and all of that sort of stuff. And then she's relieved to be into bed. But it's almost, it's something that's damning, is that when you have dementia, you almost go back to being a child, and you then become the adult. And as my sister turned around and said, she hates to tell our mother, what to do. And there are things like we have to give her a sort of like a stool softener that's in liquid form, and my sister gives her that just before she goes, and we have to say, you can't have a cup of tea until you've drank that, and it takes her a couple of hours, which means that she's denied really cups of tea that she loves, because she's got to drink that, because it's very important, because it's got medicine in it. So yeah, it's a tricky one. But I say mixed because, well, I'll talk about it a little bit later on. There has been arguments, and there's been major changes as well, which are good. So, you know, it's a mixed bag. But let's get the news out the way first. And we start off, hopefully, only up until New Year, the war. Because I as I've mentioned before, I don't really want to go into, after the New Year, keep commentating on it, when from the very beginning I just want the war to end, and I never realized it would go on as long as it did. I mean, this could go on for 20 years, we don't know. I thought sense would come in, and, you know, but it hasn't. So here we go with the war, and it's all stuff that's just been released as news today. You can look it up yourself. I have no opinion on it. But it says, Russia has tested a new nuclear-capable, nuclear-powered cruise missile named the Burevnik, Russia's top general told Putin. In remarks related on Sunday, It travelled 8,700 miles and was in the air 15 hours. It is told to be invincible to current defences. Wow. A cruise missile with nuclear power capability that can travel that far and be in the air that long. But anyway, in other news, the meeting between Putin and Trump was cancelled as Trump stated the gap between Ukraine and Russia for peace was too large to broker a deal, so he did not want to waste his time. I can understand that to an extent. I can also see that nothing should be a waste of time when it comes to peace, I will say that. But there is a big gap. He's been asking for territories and all that sort of stuff. And of course, Zelensky has been meeting with Steimer, our Prime Minister this week, and the officials of Europe that are behind Ukraine. Me, as you know, just want the war to end. And that's where I leave that. So, in the UK, quite a bit of news. Same sort of stuff as last week. Prince Andrew is under more scrutiny to release his title. So this is his princely title. It all came about because he's given away his titles by his own admission, his own request, because he wanted to take away sort of like the spotlight from the king, and it has the opposite effect, of course. As soon as he did that, the news is all over it and says, oh, what else can we take away? What else is he doing? And we find out that he's in a home that's sort of like state run, so he pays no rent, and therefore people are saying, well, it should be therefore taken away from him as well. He should be paying if he's not got his stately titles anymore. And they even debated how the government can strip away his princely title, even though he was born a prince. Now, again, I'm not a royalist. What I do know is about history. Even when in Elizabethan times, somebody that was of status, even when they were in custody, you tended to find that they moved them into homes owned by the king or queen. Even, they were either put in the Tower or they were banished to these stately homes, owned by the monarchy, and then banished, France, wherever it is. That's been around for years and years and years. I don't really have a position on it because I'm not a royalist. All I know is that I've never really taken to Andrew, totally not taken to him in the last 25 years. And it all stems back to the marriage to Fergie and all of that, in regards to this is a prince that I can't get behind, and I still feel the same. So I don't really have an opinion on it because I've never really liked the guy. So, to me, it's a nothing. Other stuff that was in the news: in Wales, Labour outed in a by-election. In Wales, Labour were outed in a by-election to Plaid Cymru. I think that's Plaid Wales or something. I'm not very good at pronouncing Welsh because I'm not Welsh myself and I don't know the language. So I apologise right now. But it was all over the news, saying that there was a 3-1 against Labour in Wales, which goes to show just how much people do not like Labour, and they feel that this is going to spread. Yeah, I see that. I mean, at the end of the day, when we were voting, again, it came down to two parties. Much tighter this time, though, because there was the Reform Party, less the Liberal Democrats, as I used to call them. But nobody wanted the Conservatives in. we didn't think any other party would get in, so what's the point? And so Labour had a landslide victory, and that was always going to happen. The Conservatives over 12 years, I could turn around and say it's the most tumultuative 12 years with COVID, a war, all of that sort of stuff going on, that nobody in the world knew what to do in COVID and all of that sort of stuff. And Conservatives looked bad all the way through it. So, yeah, you know, that was what it was. We're past that point, and we're under Labour, and Labour have backtracked on just about everything like we thought they would. You know, taxes, money, all of that sort of stuff. No matter what they turn around and say, oh, we've reformed this, we've reformed that. You've done it with money that you're taking away from us, that during a time where I think the world is in a recession. So, yeah, not great. The next story is there's a manhunt underway in London as an asylum seeker who's been convicted of murder was mistakenly released from jail. My God, we haven't heard of those sort of stories in a long time. And when we hear about them, we go, how can you mistakenly release someone like that? It just blows my mind. And then there's a story. Oh, sorry. The rest is sort of like the weather. Storm Benjamin hit this week. Yep, it did. But it caused less damage than was feared. There was yellow warnings across most of England. As it came through, it sort of like damaged the southeast more than anything. Winds moderate, 70 miles an hour. I mean, we've had winds much later on as we go through the alphabet, because they start off with storm A, storm B, storm C, so they give them names. And we've had 90 to 120 mile an hour later on. But this one has passed, but it's caused a bit of disruption to the airflow up north, apparently. So we're now getting Arctic winds pushed down earlier than expected, and there is expected to be snow. Now, I've heard this before, snow, but it always tends to hit the tops of very high hills. So I should think this is going to affect the north more if it does happen. And, I just look at it that these storms do cause disruption. They're saying that this one is not climate change, but everything is climate change, really. Our weather forecast, our weather is governed by the changes that go on the Earth. So we can't turn around and say that climate change hasn't affected this or caused any of this. So I just look at it like that, and that's really the news. There was really nothing in here that was any particularly good, and really we get to sort of like me a little bit now, and I'll start off with work, really, because there's nothing really to say. We had a process document that we needed to read this week, all of us, and note any mistakes, changes, or anything like that. And I wish I had the time to read it more than I did. What tends to happen is that the management point out the mistakes, you then read those, you then read the document, go, well, I don't need to mention that then, I don't need to mention that then. And as other people read it quicker, they take away those bits that you find and you cross those out until you get to a point where when you report on it, there's nothing really to say. I've been in one of those positions mostly because of me being taken away to look after my mum rather than the work that's being given to me. It's been a pretty traumatic week, really. But saying that, the positives is that I was given a project, and I cordoned off one section of this project to make it so that I could standardize future ones that I have to do with other types of hardware. So I specifically shot at printers, and then developed a spreadsheet of extracts of all of the printers, and then developed a way of looking at the gaps that shouldn't be there. So what I'm trying to say about that is there are certain statuses that you have in our hardware assets, you know, like in use or retired or disposed or, you know, missing, you know, that sort of stuff. And there are huge amounts of fields like serial number, assets, and all of that sort of stuff, asset tag, discovery, that sort of stuff, how it was discovered. And so therefore you shouldn't have blanks for something that's in use. I mean, how can you have a printer that's in use that's got a serial number but no asset tag? How can you have something that's retired and not have its new location listed? How can it still be at the same location? Do you see what I mean? If it's been disposed, that sort of stuff. So, you know, the first thing you got to do really then, isn't it, is indicate all the blanks, put filters on, and then come up with a sort of like a static report, which I did. But before I did that, I did a pivot table. Now, I've done pivot tables before. They're very useful. They can be quite complex, but it all came back to me. So I got the pivot table working in about an hour and a half. And then I started to write the final report after I'd put in all the blanks and chosen the different statuses. And then added a difference column. So the difference column is actually the column that's where something is true, something's great. The numbers that are for blanks are the bad bits. So you have the number of assets that are listed as in use. You then have the blanks that are listed there, and then you have a calculation that changes between what the blanks are and what the maximum number of devices are in that status, and that's the difference, and that means that those have got data that you'd think is true. So yeah, it's a nice static report. In a way, when I present that to management, they can look at it and go, oh yeah, that's great. So I haven't given anything away in regards that's got going in work that's private. That's stuff that you would do in any asset situation. But it was fun because it took my mind away and it made me think about pivot tables and all of that sort of stuff, while the heartache of what's going on with your mother is going on in the house. So that was work. When it comes to mum and me privately, they sort of, no, I'll do me privately first, the DVLA, because everybody seems to be concerned about this. I didn't phone them till Friday. Now, the reason for that is if you remember last time, they said it will take 7 to 10 days to scan a document that they've already got in electronic format, which is a farce. So I thought, well, there's no point me phoning. So I phoned on Friday and got the same answer. It has now been scanned. I went, oh, great. So I can drive now then. No, it's under review now. I said, review for what? And this is where you don't get angry at the person you're speaking to. You speak in the way that I'm speaking now. And you basically turn around and you say, this is ridiculous. I'm not having a go at you. I'm having a go at the process. You know full well that this was a mistake. You've gone through the process where you've now got the scanned document. Surely this now is just a rubber stamp. But I know what you're saying now, that you've passed this on now to another department and it's at the bottom of the pile. And I therefore could be here for another 6 weeks. And I said, that's not going to go, because I, as I explained now to him, I said, I will go to my MP. There's nothing, I work for the government and my government won't speak to you because we're two totally different departments with two totally different processes. But I will say this, I will go to my MP because you're being cruel. And what I mean by that is that every day that I can't support my mother by being able to drive her to appointments and drive her to hospitals or the GP, or be able to get her food, you're taking a day away where I can make her happy. And the whole point of with being in dementia is that your family can take care of your loved ones. So you're being extremely cruel. And if she dies during this period where I'm waiting for the DVLA, you will have the force of the press on you, and you will have the MP on you, and everybody's going to be looking at this, because you need to have a process where it says this was a mistake and it should be nulled, and you don't have that. You go through a process even though it's not needed, and you put me at the bottom of the pile every time you go from department to department to department. And he said he understood, but there's nothing that he could do. And I said, well, I'll be phoning every 2 days next week. And being as working days are 5-day weeks, you might find I'll be phoning up 3 times. And I am just going to be wasting your time, because every time I call you, I press that button that you have to call me back. And that means that you have to phone me and tell me the same thing, and you're going to get totally pissed off, and I'll keep you on the phone for 30 minutes. You will get this done. And if anything does happen to my mother, you'll have the force of that, what I mentioned before, on you. And, you know, I did mention, I said, I haven't raised my voice with you. I haven't threatened you. I haven't asked you even for your name. I'm just letting you know this doesn't need to go on. And all you need to do is speak to your manager. Get them to speak to the department that's now got this in review. It will take them 20 seconds to read through that questionnaire that says there's no other information. And it would be rubber stamped. But what you're doing is you're saying, we don't talk to other departments, and I won't accept that as an answer or an apology. So that was the end of that. The other thing is a poor one, and it's just arguments. There's things that have changed. Me and my sister have been very cordially this week, but there was a time where I had to come in and tell my sister that the ultrasound has been booked. And I walked in and there was Paul, the person who threatened me. And I asked him nicely, Paul, can you get out the way so I can speak to my sister, please? It's about my mum. And he carried on talking and then walked past me and went out the door. And I spoke to my sister about the ultrasound and then said, I'm not very happy to my sister because Paul's in and I told you he threatened me. And she said, I have nothing I can do about it. You live with it. You don't own this house. Tough. And I said, you can't do that. You've got to understand that I don't walk into your house. What if I walked into the house with your biggest bully, person who threatened you, into your house, said, well, that won't happen because I own my house. And I said, and while mum's got dementia, I look after this house. You don't do the stuff around this house. And she says, but you don't own it. And she said things like, and mum likes Paul. So, and I turned around and said, oh, so mum would like Paul then if she heard that her son, her blood son, was threatened by him? You think that would be something that happened? And it just turned into an argument. But the good news about all of that is it ended quite cordially because we expressed reasons behind things that I think she listened to, but I don't know. The underlying remark is that my sister has always worked on the status of this. She's very nice to everybody that she ever meets, but if they ever cross her, then she can be nasty. And that's how she is with me, and that shouldn't be the way. She said that to my mum, and while I was in the kitchen making my mum's cups of tea and that, she was talking to my mum about this. And that's goes back to the first argument where she said she will continue to look after mum, but anything that looks like it will help me, she won't do. And I think she slowly turned that around, because I do notice that she does more washing up and sometimes some cleaning duties, but most of the time she just leaves things for me to do. So it's not 100%, and that's what gets me tired. But we had a problem this week, and this is where things have changed. Now there was a point, and it took 6 months to get to this point, that I said to my sister that I just feel like a janitor when you're here. When you're here, you do everything for mum. I have no say in it, and then I'm just carting water to you, like bowls of water with the soap and flannels in it, and I'm bringing water for mum to swill her teeth out, her mouth out when she's cleaned her teeth, or I'm taking the washing away and putting it into the washing machine while you're doing all of the washing and caring and getting mum into bed. And that's not right. I'm a carer. I have as much right to do all of this stuff. And if you're ill, I won't know how to do these things. And something happened this week where it scared my sister. Now, I've been saying to my sister for a long time, I think that it's a waste of time her coming at night. In fact, actually, I think it's cruel. My mum might want to feel tired at 8:15, but because you are coming to actually look after mum and get her to bed, you're making her wait 45 minutes for you to turn up. Then when we get her into bed, we're waiting for you to get a lift or a taxi or a bus to take her home, and that leaves the lights on and she can't sleep because the lights are on. That's cruel. Whichever way you look at it, and I've been saying it for months and months and months. But what happened to mum this week is that she pushed her table away, which she usually does if she wants the toilet, but she had a blank expression on her face. And that signified into my sister that we were told that she could be having mini strokes, and that's when things like that might happen. Now, there's no droopiness or anything like that, but we do believe that that might have been the cause of when she collapsed. And that's what started the whole thing. And when my sister thought with the table pushed forward and her having a blank expression, she could have tilted forward and smashed her head on the table. So she agreed that she thought that she needed to be with mum until I finished work at 4:00, and that I would then do the duties in the evening because mum's sort of like walking is better in the evening than it is during the morning when she's stiff, which is true. And I was just going, oh, thank God you listened. But no, she didn't listen. She's doing it because she's got no choice. And but I look at it as a victory. I just turned a victory for mum, should I say, in the fact that it makes sense. It's been making that sense for months. But it took to the point where this happened for her to do it. Do you see what I'm getting at? It wasn't because she listened to me. It's because she saw it for herself. And I just go, I don't care. Got done. And so since Tuesday, I've been looking after mum, and there's no person coming in after 4:00. And that means I can lock the door and all of that sort of stuff and go to bed, hopefully at a normal time, and get more sleep, which then helps with my fatigue. Do you see what I mean? All of that stuff could have happened far earlier, but it happened. So, see what I mean about clearing the air? It's good, right? And, we had to start talking about the funeral. And this is where that was brought into the argument because my sister now gets what they call attendance allowance, and she paid off her husband for the fuel that he used to get her to here instead of using buses and taxis, or she paid herself, by the way. But for all those 5 months where nobody had any money, there was no attendance allowance, we used my money, I got 0. But I would have done it anyway. But what you have to understand is any money that I would have saved, that I would have done towards the funeral, any money that I needed to buy a suit, say, I've got no money. And she's took it all. And she just looks at it and says, prove it. Prove that you spent that money on mum. And I said, I've got receipts. And she says, but that's your rent. And all of this sort of stuff comes into it. I knew she would use these sorts of things into an argument. And whichever way you look at it, I didn't even get 100 quid. Do you know what I mean? It's ridiculous when she got a back pay of nearly $2,000. It's cruel to me, but it fits into the anything that helps you situation. Do you see what I mean? But I love my sister, and we're looking after our mum, and even the GP that called us on Friday to talk about my mum's health recognised that we're just 2 exceptional people. And my sister, even when we're dealing with mum, turns around and says how I'm here to help, and that we're all helping her and giving her best care, which is the biggest compliment I could possibly get from my sister. And so I end this with, I love my sister, and all the arguments that happen are just because of care for mum. And everything that happens from those arguments turns into a positive, and that's what you look at, and that's everything else is negligible, not worth talking about anymore, and you move on. I need to spend as much time as I possibly can with my mum. I've started taking pictures of her to remind me of her, because I've got very few of my dad. And we're looking at ways now that we can get my mum's hair cut and blow dried without taking her to hairdressers because she can't move. But this takes me round to mum. So what happened with mum this week is that, as I said, the GP called us. He was very concerned that the naproxen tablet was having no effect, which it wasn't, and he's now put her on another tablet, which I think is worse. But we've got to give it a try, and that's amitriptyline. Now, anybody that knows what amitriptyline is, it really is a brain drug. It's terrible. It used to be used for depression, but what it does have is a sleeping agent, and some painkiller type parts to it. But it can cause you to be unstable on your feet and cause dizziness. So, but we've got no choice. Naproxen wasn't working. We then go back to the cocodamol for the painkiller, and we use amitriptyline. And we only started that on Saturday night, which was yesterday. So, but what's happened in the last 2 days is scary, in the fact that for the last, it must be 2 weeks, it's required 2 of us to get her up in the morning and walk her to a chair. And in the last 2 days, we've had to use the wheelchair to get her from the bed into the other room because she can't walk in the morning. And that's the start now of her legs just going totally. The ultrasound that's booked is not until November 13th. It's too far away. In fact, we'll be reviewing the tablet amitriptyline quicker than we will getting to the ultrascan for her leg. And so it's a damning report when you consider the blankness on her face and all of that sort of stuff that's been happening. And now we're on a tablet that neither of us agree with. And we're now using a wheelchair. And that means that she won't be on her legs to walk, which is the biggest part of the exercise, is walking from the bed to the chair and the chair to the bed. We'll be only doing that once a day, which will be with me. And that's only if I feel that I can hold her. I understand from my sister's point of view, she hasn't got the strength like I have to keep my mum up. But when you got your mum shuffling forward and she's now starting to cross her legs in front of her, she's then tilting. And when you're tilting, you can fall. And then if you can fall, you need the wheelchair. And so it makes sense that we have to use the wheelchair. But we've only used the wheelchair since yesterday. I have feelings that we might be able to get past that. I'm hoping, should I say. But I also have to live with the fact that the 50-50 side of me goes, no, you'll probably find now that the wheelchair is the new norm. And this is where I value my sister's opinion. I value anybody's sort of like opinion that sees this, even, that family that come in is what I'm talking about. And so I go with what I think is right, and I don't like to see my mum in pain, so we use the wheelchair. Simple as that. There's no question about these things. So that's the week, and you can see it's been a mixed one. There's been some positives, there's been some negatives, and there's been some clearing of the air. And you look at it like that, and you go, hey, it is what it is. And, or as I pointed out to my sister, this is a very good way for me to vent. Because where my sister has a husband that she can speak to, where the other side of my family, they've got the husbands or siblings that they can talk to. I have no siblings, and my friends went away years ago, and all I've got is online. And therefore, I can't talk to my mum, can I? She wouldn't understand. So, and it would be cruel. So I live on my own. And it makes you feel lonely. It upsets me. The amount of times I've gone into the toilet just to spend 5 minutes by myself trying to get over the pain of seeing your mum in pain, it's damning. And there isn't really, I don't want to speak to departments about how you deal with this. It's friendship I need. You need that friendship thing, not a person I've never even heard of listening down the end of the phone and so forth. But I have got occupational health to speak to. They called me this week. I've got business occupational health calling me next week, and all of those things is where I can mention what's going on and all of that sort of stuff. My sister can't change the fact I've got nobody to speak to. But I hope she recognises it. I mention it to her, but it falls, I feel, a little bit on deaf ears. So I just concentrate on my mum. That's it. Don't want to talk about it anymore. That's pretty much my week. It's as damning as anybody else's week that's out there. This is a blog. It's a diary. This is what I would be writing in a diary if I had one. If I died, it would be discovered and read. They would then understand what was going on. That's what this is all about. So don't need to comment on it or express anything on it. Just be there for me. Write some questions. All of that sorts of helps me. Which leads me on to the shout-outs, which is brilliant. I love the shout-outs. It takes me away from everything that we're talking about there. And every single person who watches the blog each week, thank you so much. It's really encouraging to know that there are people out there that want to know the story week by week that's going on. I don't know what it's going to be like when my mum's gone. I haven't really thought that far ahead. Would I continue this blog after my mum's gone? I think I will. It's supposed to be for my nephew and niece to understand what's going on in my life, and there will be a section where I have to think about how I deal with grief. I've dealt with it once before with my dad. It will be a different type of grief this time because I will be alone. Once my mum's gone, there is nothing left. And of course, every time I video this, you've got the room that I live in. I don't live in any other part of the house. There are bits of my stuff around the house, but I don't live in those. And I might not have this house a year after my mother is gone. Who knows? I don't know. It all depends on how much money I can get for a mortgage at my late stage of life. It's why, as I said, it was very important for me to keep my manager's position because that gave me growth and pay rises. I get no pay rises now. I am trapped where I am. So, what can you do? I can't really go for another job at this particular time because I couldn't, they're very nice to me where I work in regards to me being away from my keyboard. Would another company that's only just took me on feel the same? Doubtful. So, yeah, well, the future is the future and we don't know what it is, so I won't speculate. But when it comes to the shout-outs, I'm going to read out these names. Every single one of them has made a comment. There may be more. I don't know. I'm going to hit the refresh button now, just in case. But it'll be the last refresh I do. There we go. And if there's no more there, then that will be it. So I'm just going to click on the read mores so I don't have to do that later on. There aren't that many anyway, so that's fine. There we go. So we're back to the way we were. So these are the names that have left a comment. Rocket Bunny, Wee Bob Art, Steve's Gaming Part 2, Martroid, Carl Todd and Colin Jones, aka Ponder. And it may seem like it's a smaller amount this week, but then again, it's been a very busy week, hasn't it? I mean, we're reaching the end of the month. People are going to away at weekends and doing certain stuff and visiting people. It's a different time. So I'm very happy because any comment I read out means I don't have to talk about things that I remember from my youth. In fact, the questions usually spark something in me to talk about my youth. So we'll start off therefore then with the comments. Why not? So with these are in no particular order. The first one is from Wee Bob Art, And it says, I haven't had a chance to watch, Del. I'm on a 12-day of working with another 5 to go before I get a day off. So you can see what I was talking about. People are doing lots of weird hours and working longer and all of that sort of stuff. So 12 plus 5, you can see that's 17 days before he gets a day off. I mean, that's a huge amount of stuff to do when you've also got family. So, yeah, it's understandable. So it says, I hope life is good as it can be for you. All the best wishes. And that's all I can ask from anybody. And that cheers me up no end that he took his time just even to write that. That's absolutely brilliant. Salute, wee Bobart, and I hope everything's good with you. And you sort of like know a little bit about what's been going on this week already. So we get to Rocket Bunny now. This one seems to be a lot longer. My God. Excuse me. Don't have a cold, but it's a bit dusty in here because I was dusting around yesterday. You wouldn't believe it. But I was. So we got Rocket Bunny, and he's put, hey, Del, I hope you and your mum have had a good week. I've continued to support my dad being a taxi driver to the hospital where my mum is staying. And this is where I'm turning around and saying, I can't do that. It's really frustrating. It's a 50-mile round trip daily with a couple of days where my sister is able to do so. And I recognise that because anybody that knows me, and we were talking about when my mum used to visit my granddad, we had to travel from here to Warwick, which is a good 18-mile trip. And then you got the 18-mile trip back, and we were doing that 3 times a week. 2 times during the week and on a Sunday, basically. And so I think it was a Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday we did that. Yeah, we did. And I had to do that after I finished work. So you can imagine I'd finish work at 4, get in the car, travel up there, spend a couple of hours with Granddad, get back home, and with my mum. And we would be so tired that we haven't eaten anything. That I made sure that Mum had something to eat. I said, Mum, have some soup or something, for God's sake. And we'd be going to bed. That'd be it. That'd be the day. That was Tuesday and Thursday. And on Sunday, I would be sort of like travelling up there in the afternoon, which made it a little bit easier. But that Sunday was the only time that we did that. But we spent more time then. We were up there for 3 hours, I think. So it was just before his dinner, while he was having dinner, and then just after dinner. So, yeah, 3 hours. And it's those nursing homes where you have to ask to leave and you have to ring the doorbell to get in. You know what I mean? So all of that sort of stuff slowed you down. Then there was the car parking, and oh, my God, it was a time that I don't really want to remember too much, other than the lovely talks I had with my granddad, which I'll never forget. I hope I don't. You continue, I have to confess I watched all your video at the start of the week, and now I've reached the end of the week. I realised I haven't left the comment. That's a commonality. Don't worry. And I forgot most of what you discussed, which, understandable. So, pretty poor of me, I know. Sorry, not pretty poor at all, matey. A lot of people watch this over gaps of, like several days and listen to it half an hour at a time or 20 minutes. And that happens. Some people could turn around and say, well, you could shorten your blog. But as I said, it's an end of week blog. It's not something that I do every day. I don't think it would work every day. You can imagine what that'd be like when I miss a day. I'd be having to fill in 2 days. It's a diary. It's the end of the week. It's a review. So it is what it is. I do have a couple of questions, though. I'm sure, like all of your viewers, we are fuming at the fiasco around your driving licence. Well, I'm glad you are. I meant to say this a few weeks ago, being that you work in another government department. Is there any way work can help your issue? I've already asked that of my manager, and I asked of it quite early. And I asked him actually again 3 weeks ago. And he said there isn't, because we're part of the court system. And you're not taking anybody to court, and there's nothing that a manager can do, especially when it comes to the fact that you care for your mother and you cut your driving down to going to an office. So there's very little that we can do. But I did ask him again 3 weeks, about 3 weeks ago, saying to him that they're asking now for questionnaires and all of this sort of stuff that I don't think is required, and it's all a mistake. Is there anything that he can do? And he said he would go and speak to his head, and his head just came back and said it's a local matter for your GP and your MP. And so really, if I was to phone the MP's office, I might get some traction, but it's so late in the day now. I've already threatened that I'd speak to my MP, and I probably should have done it a lot earlier, but I think it'd fall on deaf ears. One person phoning up, asking to speak to the MP, try get an appointment. Weeks down the line, you get that appointment, and then he'd get his secretary to do it or whatever it is. It's going to be like that, isn't it? I mean, whichever way you look at it, I'm probably poo-pooing it and not giving it a try. But if this continues any further, I've got to do something like that. So you then continue. Sorry if that's a daft question coming from someone who's never worked in a government organisation. No, it's not a daft question. I actually did it. It's just it didn't get me very far. Failing that, maybe it's even worth making an appointment with your local MP. Well, that's what I've just talked about. It makes my blood boil that they can instantly, erroneously revoke a licence and yet take months to correct the mistake. Yeah, they even turned around and said the letter that they sent out to revoke the licence should have been reworded, because the very first top line says, based on medical evidence, for which the GP surgery has already told me they never contacted them. So there is no medical evidence. The only thing they had to go on was a form that I filled in, which had 6 questions, and that's it. So they just revoked it without looking at any background at all. So you live and learn, don't you? On a more entertainment-related note, have you managed to watch any of the Doctor Who Season 13 Blu-ray set yet? I'm halfway through Planet of Evil now, after really enjoying Terror of the Zygons. I was very pleased with the first story. However, I'm a bit concerned on the quality of the second. It's like the frame rate is a bit jittery. It's very slight. And I've seen some concerns on YouTube regarding the quality of the AI tools used to upscale the source material. That AI tool, by the way, I've got some correlation on that, was only in certain sections. So it wasn't used to upscale all the way. I also saw a word of warning from Denny in your Discord that there may be some issues with the discs also. And I had a chat with him about that. I just wondered if you or any other viewers have experienced any issues with this set yet, and I'd love to hear if anybody else has bought it, whether they have had these issues. What I will express is what I've done. I've watched Terror of the Zygons, and I've watched Pyramids of Mars. Those are the 2 that I've watched so far, so I've skipped the second story. But I didn't notice much jitter, but I've altered my TV set to not use the television's native controls for controlling the shift of the picture from left to right. Right. The way this works is when something pans up and down, it has to shift itself and refresh itself going up and down, and the same from left to right, but things are now wide, right? So when you're shifting a wide image back and forth, you get jitter, because there is only what they call 24 FPS mode, which is movie mode really on most modern TVs, and the 24 frames per second is not great for wide expanse tellies with refresh rates. So the HDR is doing all its color corrections. It's also changing the not only the color but the brightness and darkness, all done through a processor, by the way, through your player, which is broadcasting the data at a certain megabits per second through a HDMI cable. With 4K, it's usually anything up to 100 MPS per second. You won't get anything like that with streaming, by the way. And it's got to move the picture and refresh. And all of that put together means that the telly's doing an awful lot of work. and sometimes you get frame jitter. But it's also based on how the picture was made up. And I can only imagine that there could be firmware updates that you need to do, and there could be settings that you need to change. I haven't had to do any of that with Terror of the Zygons or Pyramids of Mars. Okay, it might well be that, if I remember rightly, Planet of Evil has got a lot of neon, weird sort of like special effects for the BBC department to do in the 70s, because that's what we're talking about. What are we talking, 76, 75, 76? So, yeah, it might have the hardest thing to do to pan left and right. And it is set in a sort of a jungle sort of environment. It's supposed to be a planet of evil, and it's supposed to be full of dank trees and leaves and stuff, if I remember rightly. So, yeah. I haven't heard of anybody saying that the discs need to be returned or that there is a problem with the discs. But that's not to say at this early stage that there isn't. But if there is, it's going to be pretty damning for the BBC, because they've already recognised that 2 sets, that's the 18th and 20th series discs, have had to be remastered, and they were corrected. And we're all waiting, the people that have got the collection sets, to get those replacement discs. I know I am. I'm one of them. And we've been waiting months. So if they're still bringing out stuff and they haven't checked this stuff and it's got problems, God help us when the Blake 7 box set comes out. It'll have the same mastering and the same tools that are being used to upscale and all of that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I watch just like you, with scrutiny on this, but I haven't heard of any replacement program, and I haven't heard of anybody other than people in Discords and a few YouTube channels that have said this. But I've put into my Discord the highest ended person that wanted to talked about Dolby Vision 2, because even though Dolby Vision 2 is not used in this instance, he talked about how screens refresh left and right. And I've got a funny feeling, if you look at that jitter that you're talking about, it's when it's going left and right. It won't be when it's going up and down. And so it's falling into the same thing that he's talking about. It's just a fault on how LEDs, OLEDs, and RLEDs and all of those sorts of stuff, the new mediums, refresh the screen. So, yeah. So you then continue, always, anyways, before I sign off, let me know when you want to play some Planet Crafter. I see from time to time in Steam after 9. I see you from time to time in Steam after 9. That's quite right. When I've got my mum to bed, and it's usually about 9:30, I give myself half an hour to just take my mind away from the pain of trying to get your mum into bed. It's so disheartening. I say, I love you, mum, and she says, thank you. She doesn't say, love you back. All of that sort of stuff. And it gets to you, and you have to switch your brain off and do something. And sometimes I'll watch a film knowing that I've got to go to bed in the next hour. And sometimes I'll go on Steam and I'll play a game. Sometimes I'll record a YouTube video. But it's very difficult to do the YouTube video because all I'm doing really at 9 is planning, not recording. If you plan on a Tuesday and then you don't record it on a Wednesday and you then do it on the Thursday, you forgot what you planned on Tuesday, and all that sort of stuff happens. So I'm tending to find that anything I'm bringing out comes out on a Saturday, and the same happened this week. So I did a video this Saturday, and I did one last Saturday, and that's how it seems to be working at the moment. But I'm looking at shorter all the time. It's something that I can do, and that's coming along. So that's the explanation on why you see me after 9. But I don't want to keep sending you messages in case you think I'm pressuring you. First session, we can just see... Oh, right. I see from time to time, no, but I don't want to keep pressuring you in case I'm pressuring you. First session, we can just see how you get on setting up the co-op, if you like, and have a voice chat. I did a full playthrough of the first planet with a friend last year, and it's really very easy to do. I'll wait to hear from you. Right, he's talking about Planet Crafter, and it doesn't... Oh, it does. It mentions it at the beginning. Let me know when you want to play some Planet Crafter. Now, this comes from last week, okay? I said Planet Crafter sounds ideal, and it does. And I also mentioned that there's a new DLC coming out called Toxicity, I think it's called, because I didn't want to start a planet with you, which was the old style planet, when a new one's coming out in, 18, 19 days time. So I thought to myself, that'd be a great start. And at 9 o'clock, I can probably look at that second DLC or third DLC where there's a new moon, get myself familiar with the controls again, and then we could come in and do Toxicity as a collaboration, and that'd be really good because I love Planet Crafter. When I look at how long I played Planet Crafter last year, was it, or the year before? Can't quite remember. I played 100. I think it said I played 89 hours, something like that. So I played that game a lot, and I do remember loving it. And I even Steve's Gaming, a good friend of mine, did something like a 70 odd episode on it, and he got to the point really that he was nearly at the end but decided there's nothing more really to see. And I totally got it from his perspective, because everything that he was doing now was a repeat of what he did earlier, which was just putting more rockets in the air, just putting more drilling machines down, and more heating up of the planet to get it to terraform. So you were just replacing a drill with another drill, replacing a rocket with another rocket, and all of the rest of the stuff. So it made sense. It'd done the story. It basically got to the point where you saw where the gods had left all the special weapon type thing that was part of the first story. So I totally got why he ended it. But I think he had fun. He wouldn't have done that many episodes, I think. And I think it's the longest episode Runny had done, even over Minecraft, Satisfactory, all of those games. He didn't do half as many as he did with Planet Crafter. So I think he enjoyed it as well. You say, take care, mate, and look forward to your show with Ian on Wednesday. Yes, we'll talk about that in a bit. And I hope you go, and I'll say this now, but I will repeat it later on. Ian is doing a special with Muckman-Movies tonight at 7 o'clock. They're doing a horror-themed live broadcast. It will be over on Muckman's channel, so I really hope that you do go and try and support. I will try and support, but unfortunately 7 o'clock is where I will now be looking after my mother exclusively. So it's going to be very difficult for me to look after my mum and watch something on the phone while my mum's trying to watch the darts or something. So it's going to be tricky, but I will try and get there. But if it ends at 9 o'clock, which I've got a fear it will, that's when my mum will probably just have got to bed. So I'd have missed the lot, and I'll have to watch it as a rerun, which is not supporting someone, but it is, but in a very, very slight way, because I like to be there to ask questions. That's what live broadcasts is the fun part about. So yes, I'll end there with you, Rocket Bunny, and say salute, my friend, and we are definitely going to be playing Planet Crafter. You've selected the game that I think is the most fun as well, and I will be getting that DLC. I think from what I remember, the updates to Planet Crafter are always free, but the DLC has got a slight charge. But if I remember rightly, they were the expansions were like $5.99, very cheap. I can afford $5.99. That's a pint and a half at a pub. I'll definitely be able to afford that. So thanks very much, matey, and I'm going to say salute and move on to my next one, which is Steve's Gaming, and that means I have to do my salute, don't I? Which is, you little bastard, you little shit, your channel's just too good, you little bastard. like that, because it's the law. And I'll read it out, but I've made a little note for myself, and that means that I have to go back to an earlier question because I didn't read it out last week. It says, "Hi Del, great blog as usual. You mentioning Looking magazine brought it all back to me. I used to buy it every week and it was really good. I hope you and your mum have had a reasonable week. I hope all the mess with your license gets sorted and you finally get it back. It's been ridiculous anyway. I have one question for you this week." Well, you got two because I've got to read out last week's. What toy brings back the best memories for you and why? All the best and give my love to your mum. And you know I'm going to give your love to my mum. She loves all that attention. I say, "Oh, Steve's, said, oh, has he really?" Like this. It's great. What toy brings back the most memories? I tell you what, toys were important to me up till I was 11. I went up to big school, secondary school. Things changed. That's when I learned I had to earn some pocket money, not just be given it, and did things like mowing next door neighbours' lawns and washing their cars and doing a paper round and all of that sort of stuff. And when I first got introduced to computers and buying my own, doing some small repairs and getting those given to me because they were going to be chucked and all sorts of stuff like that. So it's the biggest expansion that you could ever have, I think, in your life is the teenage years. And those early years were toys that were given to you at Christmas. And I had the massive amount of time, I think the best time of my life, probably 78 to 81 or probably 1980. Yeah, 1980, I'd say. Okay. And in those later years, it was all electronic toys. So there was Simon and Mr. Merlin and all of that sort of stuff. And I even had an Atari VCS in 78. So I had a bigger expansion on Pong, which was my probably earliest experience of owning my own game to run on a telly. But I do remember that in 1980 I was given my first portable telly, which is not a toy, but I want to explain that because the telly was a 5-inch screen. 5-inch screen, it's no bigger than that, right? And to the right of it was a radio, and above it was a tape deck, and it was in a sort of ghetto blaster handle type thing, and it's what I had to play my games on for a substantial amount of years till I could afford a colour telly. I skipped black and white portable because of the 5-inch little portable TV that I had my first computers on. It wasn't fun writing code from magazines on that, but somehow I did it. And it didn't damage my eyes because I tell you what, I wore glasses from the end of the first year of working for Lloyd's Bank, believe it or not. And that was from looking at dumb terminals, green screen monitors, the IBM's dumb terminals in 1989. And I realised at the end of the year that I couldn't read a number plate for the distance that was required because I asked my dad to help me and I couldn't. We had a tape measure. And he read it out. He read it out to me after I tried to say what it was and I got 2 letters wrong. Legitimately, they were eyes. They were ones and things like that were equivalent in letters. So yeah, I got them glasses and I've worn them ever since. But I learned to drive my car and I read a number plate in the late 80s when I passed my test, and it was a year into, a year or two driving a car that I couldn't read a number plate. So my eyes deteriorated based on 8 hours of looking at green screens, which had no real protection at the time. They were CRTs. So yeah, that's sort of like how that happened. But we're supposed to be talking about toys. But I'm just mentioning that because it's part of my memories. And when it came to toys, I got a multitude of electronic stuff. I got Simon, as I said, Merlin, as I said. I got a $6 Million Man digital watch, which I loved, by the way. That was brilliant. Electronic board games, which weren't great for me, other than I got Battleship, which was great, and I got an electronic chess game. But those weren't toys that were exceptional. I'm going to change view, actually, because I think I've got it up on the screen, because I did read that question earlier in the week because I wanted to give it a really good answer. So I'm going to go to media playback, and I'm just going to show you one particular toy that sort of expanded my mind a little bit, and that's this one. It's called Starbird. Now, Starbird was very important to me because I was still 10 or under, and it was one of those Milton Bradley electronic toys that when you tilted it, it made different engine noise. So you tilted it up and it would make the engine noise as if it was putting thrusters on, like, and then when you tilted it down, it would go, like this, right? As if the engines were altering based on that, because it had a tilt mechanism. It's a little spirit level thing, I think, was inside it. But the other thing about it was it had a button that fired lasers. Absolutely brilliant. It had these little add-ons. But the other good thing was there was a button on the top in that big long stem that you can see, probably in that third picture better than the first picture, that separated the head off of the actual craft itself. I don't know if there's a picture of that down here. Yeah, there it is. So there's the head. It's in that blue picture, the second line down in, where the head separates. You could put an engine on the back of it, but the front of that shielding comes off, and you're down to there for the very front of it that you could then bolt wings onto. So it had 3 parts to that headpiece, and it was absolutely brilliant. I loved it. That was probably one of the... And that box there that you see at the very end that says Starbird was the box I think I had. Because there have been many changes. Look, you can see on some of the other pictures that in certain countries it was called Space Avenger and all of that sort of stuff. But I always knew it as Milton Bradley's Starbird. And that was my picture on the box there, which was brilliant. But then there's a year later, because that was my first foray into sort of like having electronic noises with tilts and all of this sort of stuff, I got Big Track. And a lot of people got Big Track. But being from a family with a reasonable wage that came in, I couldn't afford the drop-off cart that went on it. But the most expensive and annoying thing about Big Track was the batteries. Oh my God, how many batteries did this thing need to take? And they were all C cells, if I remember rightly. They were the huge batteries. And it must have took 6 to 8 of them. And they'd last half a day of me constantly using it. And we didn't have rechargeable batteries in our family. So it was costing my dad a fortune, to be quite honest. So it became a toy that I used less and less as the batteries became a problem. But the very thing about the back of it, where you programmed how far it's going to go forward, how far it's going to be before it turns, how very far you're going to make it go forward again, all of that sort of stuff, loved it. Now, when I think back, I think I had more fun with Evel Knievel than Big Track. Because that had an action thing that you whirled round, and when you let it go, it did stunts, and it would fly up ramps that I made, and all of that sort of stuff, and do flips, and no matter how much he crashed on the other side, like the real Evel Knievel, I have to say here, it never broke. It was always the wind-up mechanism actually that broke more than the actual bike and the Evel Knievel itself. That might be a different experience with other people, but that's what I found. So I'm going to go back to my normal camera and go back to my notes, which I'm reading out at the same time, and just say I think Starbird and Big Track are probably joint, but Starbird probably more than Big Track because it required less batteries, and therefore I could go on that more longer than the others. I mean, if you can't program Big Track to go forward, then you can't really play with it, can you? With Starbird, even if the batteries run out, you can still pretend that you're in a ship and fly and all of this sort of stuff. And I had other toys like a Dinky Eagle and all sorts of stuff that I used to say pretend that I was firing at and all of that sort of stuff. Because I'm, 9 years old? What do you expect? I was a boy playing with toys that weren't dolls, because I didn't have any dolls. Didn't have... In fact, I think I had an Action Man once, and it the hands, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was because of a knockoff, but the rubber of the hands didn't work after a time. So he took it back, and I got something else. I said, no, I want something else. I didn't really find the eyes that moved left and right much fun when you had a $6 million man that could basically, you could look for his eyes. Didn't find it particularly interested, Action Man, but I did like the $6 million man action figure. That was probably my favorite, next to Stretch Armstrong. That was the other one, but I digress. So you got it, Starbird or Big Track, Steve? Now I've got to sort of like try and hit the manage button again and go back to last week's blog, which I'm doing now on the fly, and your comment should be there and I can read out your question. So let's have a look. Right, okay, question time you put, and I'll be nice and only ask one this time. If you were the lead designer at a multi-billion company and you were asked to design a new company and completely revolutionize storage medium for games and films, what would your design look like? Yes, so obviously I read this question last week myself, after you told me I didn't read it out, and I apologize for that now, but when you think about it, I know that we're looking at the moment on holographic technology, and I know this from reports years and years ago. I used to read science magazines and all sorts of stuff. This holographic technology might use also crystalline technology, and crystalline is something that we're looking at in storing more data, and the holographic is going to be part of how it accesses it. Makes it into three-dimensional looking, and it's going to require super fast processing power to actually look the data up. It'll have to have its own processor for that, and Christ knows what the bus would be like handling that. So it would be that. It would be a holographic, crystalline, self-contained processor with a super fast bus that would be my mock-up design. And unfortunately, I think that's what a lot of science is aiming towards. Because once you take away the platters and you move to RAM, and you're using therefore silica for that, then you're basically moving into faster RAM access. And we've been looking at faster RAM access for years and years and years. So the storage medium has to therefore change to being something different to CDs, DVDs and Blu-rays, which use lasers. And so therefore your design could be fast acting RAM with laser technology, and that to me screams hologram and crystal to me. So, you know, in the same way that many people took away copper and went fibre optic, shining a light down a fibre optic is damn sight quicker than a signal down a copper line. We knew this years and years ago. So it's going to be the same, isn't it? So salute, my friend, and thank you, you little shit and all that. We get to your channel a little bit later on, but you know I do that because it's the law. Okay? And salute, my friend, thank you very much. And we'll move on to Martroid. And he's put, hi Del. Do you think CRT TVs brought something special to the retro gaming experience? Personally, I still prefer playing all my pre-HD consoles and computers on my hefty old Sony Vega. There's just something about the look and feel that modern displays can't quite replicate. And to me, Martroid, I'm dead jealous because I don't have a CRT TV anymore. I mentioned it last week that I should never have left my Philips 32, 36-inch widescreen TV back at my old house in 2005. And I did that because I was buying a plasma with the house money. So it's going to be my first $3,000 TV. It was. That's how much that TV was. And I haven't bought a CRT since, but I do have an arcade machine, a Nintendo 10 arcade machine that worked for a while, doesn't work anymore. It's a pet project of mine. And playing games on that big screen, great. Love it. And it does add something to it. I find it a great difficulty using scan lines on a LED screen. It doesn't look right. It doesn't bring back the memories of looking at a CRT. I know it does for many, don't get me wrong, but to me it doesn't. So you'll tend to find that when I'm showing a video off of me playing gameplay, it's got no scan lines. And that might be bad. And it might be one of the reasons why people are not watching them, or it could be any number of reasons. But I know that Denny turned around and said that he was very interested in a Mister because he loved how sharp the picture was in the Spectrum and Commodore 64 games I was playing. So you can't win at everything, can you? So there is that. But I'm definitely with you. I think CRT TVs brought something special to the retro gaming experience and continue to do so. I think the last console I connected to a CRT screen was my Xbox original. Yeah, it was. Because I'd gone past the Dreamcast. I had a GameCube at the same time. And then I got an Xbox. But I got my Xbox 360 when I'd moved back home. And I'd got a plasma. And that plasma allowed me to play HD gaming. So it worked out well. And that 360 also came out with a HD player a year later and allowed me to play HD movies. And there's the kickstart of me going back into movies as well. Because I couldn't afford everything, paying for all the bills at my home in Manchester. I was paying a mortgage and the water rates and the electricity and everything else. So, yeah, absolutely it does. And salute, my friend. Oh, just clicking read more. Salute, my friend, and thank you very much for that question. Absolutely brilliant. And we move to Carl Todd. And Carl's put, hi Del, thanks as always for answering the questions. Hoping for a good week for you and your mum. Thinking of a good TV show that is related to a movie, I would suggest Hannibal. Yeah, that's a good one. The best car I have owned is a Toyota Celica T-Sport. I know of the Toyota Celica model itself, but not the T-Sport. In my head, I can't think of what it looked like, but the Celica, yes. I had a Celica for a very short period of time. That went but I bought that to sell on, so I don't really count it as me owning it. This was at a time where my friend had I don't know if you recognise this, he had a Vauxhall Opal. Now, in your country, if you're not in this country, you might not recognise the name Opal. Forgotten, it did have another name in other countries. Because it was the Opel Cadet, if I remember rightly. My friend had that, Martin. He bought that after he bought a Renault 5 GT Turbo, and it turned into be one of the most dangerous cars he's ever driven, that Renault 5 GT Turbo. But anyway, I'm digressing. I'm running late this week, so I'll jump into some questions. Music is important to films, but in some cases the music really uplifts what may be so-so to something much more enjoyable. I'm thinking of films like Highlander. What films do you think would really suffer if the music was either taken out or changed? Well, first of all, Star Trek the Motion Picture. When you consider that flyby scene with the Enterprise that lasts about 7 minutes, you take the music out of that, you'd have 6 lines of dialogue and a flyby in silence. Shit. That'd be awful, wouldn't it? Star Wars would suffer. Superman would suffer. Oh yeah, Superman. You've got to have the march. Many films that have a character or based on a vehicle or whatever it is has a theme for that character. In Superman, it's the Superman March. In Star Trek, it's the Enterprise flyby, which turned into the main theme. But Jerry Goldsmith mentioned many times that themes are the things that you need to have first of all in a film, and you write the rest of the music round it. James Horner said that as well when he was dealing with it. That's why you had the Klingon battles, and you've got the Klingon soundtrack for the Klingons, and it's been used ever since. It's because that's their theme. A film that would be better off for not having music in it is a tricky one, a difficult one. I mean, I think Hollywood learnt this a long time ago, because if you watch something like A Few Good Men and the courtroom scene, I don't think there's any music there because it's all about the dialogue, and they recognise that. When you're looking at space, you need to look at the beauty of and the emptiness of space. So you've got a mix of excuse me, not silence, but probably echoey sound effects to impress of emptiness or echo. Or you've got the majestic sweeps of ships with majestic music. Or if there's big battles, bombastic music that's going on. But horror works in 2 ways. If you have a tune where a sound effect would probably be better, I would say that's true. If you look at Halloween, say, there is really only so many notes that are playing, something like 5 or 6, and it's repeated over and over again, like you know. But then you got the chords do do do, you know, playing with it. But when, say, one of the characters is walking across the road to go to another house, you've got just very little bits of notes that are just playing. And when you see Michael Myers kill someone, it's usually a shrill note and then the stabbing wound or the stabbing death. Music wouldn't fit there. That's where the sound effect works. It's the jump scare. Ching! You know, and you hear that shrill, but there's no music playing. It's the short, sweet sound effect and the death squeal that works. And I think if you watch even films like Universal Monsters of Dracula and that, it's all about the dialogue and the silence, the eeriness. So we've learned a lot of that stuff. I'm just trying to think of something where I think the music ruins it. And I think, like you've mentioned, music really does add character to a film. I can't really think of a film that's ruined by something because of the music that's in it, where a sound effect or silence would be better. That's just because of where my brain is at the moment. I can't think of one. I was thinking of films like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I was thinking of Shining. I was thinking of, I don't know, Christine. All of those types of films. And I think those have stood the test of time. Just think what Smokey and the Bandit would be like if you didn't have those banjo, country and western type tunes playing. Maybe looking at the James Bond films might give me a better indication of something where the music didn't have to play that theme at that point. It's very difficult, that one. I'm thinking of all sorts of films now, like Mission Impossible, the westerns that I've watched, you know, The Good, the Bad and the Ugly and all of that. And they've all got great bits of music in them. Even the superhero films, Spider-Man, that works. No, I can't think. I bet there's going to be 1 million people now. Not 1 million. There's going to be 5 or 10 people probably writing that down. How could you not think of that? So the next question you've got is, you've mentioned watching boxing. Do you have a favourite boxing match? That's a good one, isn't it? My God. The ones I watched with my dad for definite. The Rumble in the Jungle is definitely one. The first Frazier Muhammad Ali fight, even though Muhammad Ali loses, is a favourite of mine. I watched that a lot. Some of the Ricky Hatton fights I remember watching were great. Barry McGuigan, Frank Bruno. Oh, yeah. Nigel Benn and Chris Eubank. Got to be one of the most ups and down fights I've ever seen. My God, how bombastic was... My dad and I were on the edge of our seat when we were watching Chris Eubank versus Ben. We were all behind Ben. I think a lot of England was behind Ben. Chris Eubank was just not a likeable boxer, no matter how talented he was. He just came across with his pose like this as a stuffy, non-likeable, know-all, lucky boxer that nobody seemed to be able to lick. Do you know what I mean? Later on, we see just how talented he was. But there was a boxer that I'm asking a question now, that I watched in the mid-80s. He had dreadlocks, and he always boxed with his hands down, and he lost so many fights. And I wondered, why doesn't this guy keep his guard up, right? He boxed with his hands down by his thighs, dodging and then punching, right? And you could see these punches coming a mile away because he was punching from his hips as if he was a gunslinger, right? And if you're doing that and jabbing, then of course it's a short, stretch, isn't it? I mean, for me, it would be, I'd probably be guarding like that. I'm right-handed. So, I'd be jabbing like that. But yeah, it'll be the Muhammad Ali fights because I love those. I've watched all of the early fights with Bugner and, so many other boxers, Christ. Just trying to think of all the names, and it's just I filled it now with all sorts of films when I'm thinking now. But I think the Thriller in Manila was all right. but I like the Rumble in the Jungle better. The first Frazier fight I liked. When he was against Liston, yeah, it's an early fight. But I must admit it was the 70s fights that me and my dad watched, and very few of the 60s. And you got to remember he was out of commission for, 4 years? Just think of those fights he could have had in those 4 years when he was at his prime. He came back older, dancing less, more... Still dancing, don't get me wrong. When I say dancing, he's moving his feet an awful lot, showing his youth, darting in and out. Less of that as he got older. So he took an awful lot of pounding later on because of that. Of course, he's famous for the rope-a-dope, isn't he? Which is in my, the Rumble in the Jungle. So, yeah, I'm going to say, taking away the Muhammad Ali fights, the Ben Eubank fight, even though I love some of the Hatton fights as well. My God, because I went to see him actually at a boxing match. So number 3, if you were in charge of Marvel movies, what story would you like to adopt to a film or a TV series? Be a Spider-Man story. And it would probably be, because we've had the death of Gwen Stacy, it's already been done. I'd probably do Kraven's Last Hunt, because it's a very psychological story, Kraven's Last Hunt, where Kraven realizes that the only way that he can beat his nemesis, Spider-Man, is to become him. So he gets him out of commission and actually buries him alive in a grave. This is how dark it is. Then becomes him by putting on his costume, going out there and destroying his reputation. And by that point that he'd got back after destroying his reputation, he realised he'd become the Spider. Spider-Man then came out of the grave. He actually managed to crawl out just in time, I think this is right, just in time to see Kraven blow his own head off with a double-barreled shotgun, because he'd mastered every beast on the planet. There was nothing for him to do, so he killed himself. So it's a very dark film, but it's wholly recognised as one of the greatest stories. You could turn around and say you could do a controversial story like the Spider Clone story, and that would make a good one as a TV series, I think. And the reason I say that is the whole clone story came about as something like a 14 or 15 part story arc when the Jackal is first introduced. It's issue 129, with the Punisher. So the Punisher's in that, and ends at 149. So 20 issues. And in that time, you've got the Tarantula, Hammerhead, all sorts of other baddies that you could introduce on a weekly basis. And you even have the Spider-Mobile in there, which is a terrible thing in a comic. It was to get people to buy merchandise, kiddies to want to buy it. But it was having Spider-Man in a car don't work, even if it does go at walls. He's also broke, so how he could afford it, it was ridiculous. But yeah, Kraven's Last Hunt, I think I'd do. Yeah, I'm going to leave that one there. All the best to you and your mum. Thank you so much, my friend, and brilliant. And we got the last one now. It's from Colin Jones, aka Ponder. Salute, by the way, to Carl, if I didn't do so already. And Colin has put, you seem to have some routine and getting on top of the problems of looking after your mum. I hope this routine continues to get easier to deal with, even though your mother still needs a lot of help. That's not linked to her long-term memory issues. Yeah, we're not sure now at the moment whether the leg problem is part of the dementia, because she might be losing the ability to use her legs because she thinks she has pain when she doesn't. And that could also be not helping with the shuffling forward of her feet. So we're not sure. Fish and chips, a sure winner. Sending my regards as always. Yes, the biggest smile on my mum with the fish and chips was brilliant. Red tape, an absolute nightmare that's never in our favour. Exactly. Automan was basically bringing Tron to TV, and I loved it. Sad it didn't last very long. I think everybody realises that Automan is basically Tron to TV, and being as it's Glenn A. Larson, who absolutely stole just about everything. I mean, Airwolf is Blue Thunder, Automan is Tron, Battlestar Galactica is Star Wars. You know, I mean, he absolutely plagiarized things into his own way of doing things. On the subject of being small, have you read The Carpet People by Terry Pratchett from when he was 17 years old? I've read a lot of Terry Pratchett. I'm not sure if I've read The Carpet People. My stuff was more the Discworld series and all of that sort of stuff. But yes, I did read a lot of Terry Pratchett. I don't think I read The Carpet People. I did have a Halloween backdrop for my latest vlog, but as the next one is November, it's the only one. I do tend to agree, though, it's just one day. Oh, yeah. What I was getting at is that I'm not a big fan of 31 Days of Horror. I think it's great for all those people that love horror, but I always think that horror is every day of the week, apart from, I don't think many people will watch horrors at Christmas. But there are Christmas-themed horrors. Say, Black Christmas is one, I think, or Bloody Christmas. You've got anthology films, you know, that are set around Christmas. I remember there's one with Joan Collins where I think an asylum patient escapes, dresses up in a Santa Claus suit, goes out, and Joan Collins has just killed her husband, I think, with a poker, if I remember rightly. The kid's sleeping upstairs, and she's now got this asylum Santa trying to attack her, and the kid's opening the window to let Santa in. Yeah, there's lots of even horrors around that. So my Halloween horror will be watching my wages vanish in bills minutes after they hit the bank. Joy. I have that every month. It doesn't just affect Halloween for me, but Halloween horror, that will be one of them. Other Halloween horrors will be people trying to ring the door because it's trick or treat, and my mum trying to get out of her chair to answer the door. Always a possibility, always a headache for me, one I'm concerned with. La 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 la, look in. Yes, I remember. Regarding cars, I have no idea of any similarities of Lotus cars. Oh yeah. Now this was something that was told to me and I never really looked it up. But Steve did mention that the gearbox actually is out of out of a Maxi. But I was always told the door locks. Now, the door locks were sleek. They were flat with the panel of the car, but they had latches and they pulled outwards, right? That's exactly what the door mechanism was on a Maxi. They didn't have handles that you pull out. They had a latch and you pulled it out and it opened the door. That's definitely in a Lotus and in a Maxi. And I believe if they took the gearbox, they probably took that as well. But that was what I was getting at, and I was told that, and I never looked it up, but I'm pretty sure it's true. My question: what has been your favourite comfort food, and have recent events changed that? Oh, my favourite comfort food now is one of two things: popcorn and beans on toast. Believe it or not. Popcorn, because if you don't put any salt or anything on it, you can eat it one at a time and your brain will think that your stomach's filled. And I tend to be sitting here with spreadsheets looking, and I've got a little bowl, a little orange bowl, and I've put a handful of popcorn in it. And I don't eat them in grumps like this, one at a time. So I do something on the machine, get a figure or something, reward, popcorn. Do the next one, reward, popcorn. 30 minutes of that, I've just about got to the end of the bowl, which will be about 28 grams of popcorn. And I'm full. And that'll last me till whenever. And beans on toast. Brown bread, anchor spreadable butter, beans. No salt. Now, that's just quick and easy and takes seconds. But in the past, my comfort foods were pizza, self-made shepherd's pies, potato bakes. But notice that a lot of those are all carbohydrates, right? Carbs. And I'm eating far less carbs at the moment. Not because of anything other than I'm tending to find I feel sick at the moment, probably through stress. So I'm tending to find I can keep things down if I eat little and often. And yeah, I used to love potato bakes because they were a sauce with scalloped potatoes baked. Lovely. And I used to like a tray of chips with beans poured over the top because of the bean juice. Oh, I can think of it now. But fried food, yeah, and then again, and it's potatoes. The beans would be all right. But you got to have salt and pepper, salt and vinegar, ain't you? On those, and I'm cutting down on salt. Again, only because it's bad for my hypertension, not because of anything else. But everything sort of like correlates, doesn't it? To, my new diagnosis. And I've been to a clinic about that about a week or so ago, and the doctor's surgery have now got my new weight, which is gone down again below 17 stone. I'm now about 16 3/4, which is still hefty. And they got new blood tests, and they tested my feet, and I felt they got this sort of like, I tell you what they do, it's like a handle with a plastic piece of wire coming out of it, and they say, can you feel that? Can you feel that? Can you feel that? And they do that on your toes, on both feet. They do it on your pads, on both feet. And then she gets a tuning fork, bashes it, and pushes it against your skin and says, can you feel that up your legs? And yes, of course I could, although my left leg I felt less, but she recognised that I've got arthritis of the knee and sciatica that goes down my left leg, so that's expected. But the right foot, no problems. So that was fine. And I wait for the blood tests, and that will be there in 5 to 10 days. And we'll see what my blood results are this time. I think I've made such changes to my diet, mostly because of stress, not for any medical reason whatsoever, just throwing up and things like that because of things that have occurred that nobody would really understand unless you've been threatened or bullied ever in your life. Has caused me to not be interested in food. And the difficulty that I had all the other times was because I was caring for my mother. I was feeding her at 6 o'clock, and I wasn't eating until she was in bed, and then I'd be eating crap fast food. So basically, that's the reason why I was putting weight on, was the lack of being able to walk at the times that I needed to because work. The second one was eating after 9 o'clock, bad, and then eating the wrong things after 9 o'clock, pizza, burgers, bad, and therefore weight. Easy. Now, little and often, popcorn, beans on toast, whenever you can fit it in, because it's minutes, not cooking food that takes half an hour. And there you go. I'm still not eating correctly. I'm still not eating enough fruit. I'm still not eating enough veg. But that'll come. I have a banana now every 2 days. It's bad, isn't it, really? The only fruit I get. But I'm drinking no Diet Cokes. I'm drinking sparkling mineral water. Again, bad. Sparkling mineral water causes acid in your stomach. Guys, still water. It's what you want. But I get away with it. With this, I feel like I've got some. I'm drinking a fizzy drink like I had with my Cokes. It's a long old game that you play and you wean off of. So the next weaning off of sparkling water will be back to still. See what I mean? So there you go. I hope that answers your question, and that's the end of the shout outs and the comments. So I've been talking now for 1 hour and 46, and I hope I feel like I'm still awake. But I'm just going to take a break for a moment, just check on my mum, because I'm conscious of all that. And I'll be back in a moment, and we'll do the watched on YouTube and the wrap up. Brilliant. Thanks very much, guys. Won't be long.
And I'm back, and we're just going to do the watched on YouTube. Mum's okay, by the way. My sister's coping as best as possible. Must be difficult for her. This is where I compliment all of my family, you know. My sister sits with my mum for the whole duration, right? It's very difficult for me because when I work, I'm doing 8 hours. I then have to do chores, you know, and I can't sit with her all the time. And this is where the danger can be. But we can't get rid of that danger because I can't sit with her all the time. If those chores are not done, I have to get her ready for bed. So I have to have all the flannels and everything out the dryer. And I have to put them in the washing machine and all of that sort of stuff. So I have a lot of stuff that I'm taking away from, and also including cooking the evening meal. So, you know, my sister can't separate herself from the emotion of getting my mum up. She's there constantly until she leaves, and then she can probably relax. And that was one of the other reasons why I wanted the evening bit to herself. It wasn't just because of cruelness. It was to do with her own sanity and her own need to be with her own family. I have less of that, don't I? Because I don't have that luxury of going home away. But I'm also conscious that I can't give her the 100% care that my sister does for the up until 3 or 4 o'clock now. So yeah. But we get back to watched on YouTube. Remember, it's in 3 sections. And you know that there are 4 that I watch religiously every week, and that's This Week in Retro, Tech Moan, Gadget Show, and Chronologically Gaming. And This Week in Retro had Atari reanimates in television, which I mentioned in my last blog, so that wasn't any news to me. That's 6 days later than I actually knew about it. And they'll have another great problem in another announcement that's a little bit later on, because they'll be announcing that next week. And I've already going to say about it now. But that's the problem of recording something on a Tuesday to be broadcast on a Saturday. So, yeah. They also did Total Immersion 1985 Space Harrier. The arcade game turns 40. That was very interesting because they brought it into their next one as well. You Spin Me Right Round.
the Sega R360. And that's because Sega brought out their sprite scaling games like Hang On and so forth with immersion by having equipment that enacts with you with the motion of what's going on what you're watching. So with Hang On, it would be a bike and you tilted it. In Outrun, you were in a car with a steering wheel with vibrations and you were sitting in a cockpit type thing. Unless you were playing the stand-up version, of course. There were always cut-down versions. And games like Space Harrier and Galaxy Force and that were in this massive Sega R360 device that was like a circular ball with parts cut away that you sat in, and it rotated round like this, up and down, round, and it cost a bomb to put money in. I think it was like £2 a game. I think it was £1 at first, but most proper arcades up that price substantially, which is why you see insert coin and you have to put 4 coins in. That'd be the 50 pence, or probably in America that would have been 4 quarters. That would have been $1, and all of that sort of stuff. But those 3 things made it quite entertaining and good this week in retro. Although the reanimates in television was something I knew about a week before, so not much to that. Techmoan, he has a weird way of describing his broadcasts, and this one's no different. The Sony RM65, then a dash. Probably the least relevant video you will watch today. Does that make you want to watch it? I don't know. Clickbait, all of that sort of stuff. Most relevant? Oh, not relevant? I'll have to watch and see what he's talking about. I watch it anyway. But it was a little bit irrelevant. It was about early 80s hi-fi equipment where you synchronize 2 devices together so that you got a perfect gap on what you were recording, whether that was to tape or mini disc or whatever. So he put together a CD hooked up to a mini disc player the mini disc player already had a synchronicity circuit to it. But he did later on do a record deck to a tape deck. And there was a particular device called the RM65 that synchronized the two, because they developed a record player that scanned like a CD player. The arm went across. No, when the draw drew the record player in, a scanner scanned the lines of the tracks and recognized that there was 5 or 6 gaps, and the arm would therefore go to the gaps because it had scanned it as the record player pulled the record in. But if you wanted tracks 2, 5 and 6, you would still have to lift the needle up and all of that sort of stuff, but not with this record player. But the synchronicity box was there for all types of record players, so it would recognize no sound was coming through and pause the tape player, and then it would unpause itself when it heard the next music being played. So yes, this synchronicity box, which is quite expensive at the time, is a box that many people didn't buy, and he wanted to demonstrate it to show that if you were a real professor of hi-fi equipment and you loved your tier system, your separates, you probably bought this. But it wasn't for everybody. So I watched it and thought it was great. The Gadget Show, wow, they did a lot this week. They did What Would Steve Jobs Say? Apple's Mad Decision. I'll let you go and watch that, but it is a mad decision. It was absolutely ridiculous when you consider the cost of Apple devices. And then they did a second one, which was full of all sorts of questions that they answer. One was called Bikini Folders. Another one was 8K TVs. And there was other stuff in there. And to be quite honest, it was quite entertaining, but You know, I think we've all had problems with presentations and pictures that you shouldn't put up. That was the bikini folders. 8K TVs. To be quite honest, everybody recognises this. How much 8K content is out there for you to go and spend thousands of pounds on tellies that you've got nothing to watch with it on? Too far away, probably never going to be fully implemented, because we haven't even got everybody on board with 4K yet. So 8K, even I'm not hooked on that. So Gadget Show is great. And Chronologically Gaming, because he's only doing one video where he used to do one a day, he's still in 1982, which saddens me. And he's up to Solar Quest on the Vectrex as the big game of that week. So if you're interested in the Vectrex, it's a brilliant video to watch. It's still a brilliant video to watch because of the 1982 and the games that were coming out. But 1983 and 1984 are my hotspots for him. And we're in December of 1982, where it's Christmas. And everybody was still buying Atari. And therefore there was dozens and dozens of Atari games that he's got to get through. And he's doing all games. So he's doing computers as well, including stuff that came from Japan and all that sort of stuff. So it's going to take an age, and it saddens me, but it's still one of the entertaining YouTube things I watch each week. Other stuff I watched, Dan Monroe, Movies, Music and Monsters. He did Whatever Happened to Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. And I believe he's only just brought that out because it's Halloween, isn't it? And Abbott and Costello were two of my favourite comedians after Laurel and Hardy. They sort of disappeared when Abbott and Costello came along. And they were mixing things up with horror and science fiction and a load of other stuff. So I fell in love with those Abbott and Costello Meet films, and they did a number of them. They did The Invisible Man, Meet Frankenstein, Meet the Wolf Man, all that sort of stuff, and I ate them up. Thought they were brilliant. So that was quite a good video. Then there's a channel called GIHNP, which is Games I Have Not Played, right? And he was playing a number of games, Druid, Parallax, but it was the Parallax one that drew me in, and that was a good video, actually. I don't totally agree with the concept, because he's not reading the instructions. Now, there's a lot of my friends that don't do the same. It's what can I do without knowing anything about this game? But I look at it like this. When you bought the game, it came with instructions. And when you were playing the game, you got nowhere in it. You'd refer to that book and you'd start reading, go, oh, that's what that is it? And then you play it, right? Going into a game like Parallax and not knowing what it's even about, it's just like he was saying, I thought this was going to be Iridium, but it's not. And so he missed the whole concept of what it was about, which is getting a man out, finding the scientists, bringing them back to the craft, blowing up the ships and all of that sort of stuff. So he missed a lot, but when people were pointing that out to him, he said, oh, I'll go back and look at that then. But my whole point was, if you'd have just loaded that game in and you'd played it just instantly because you wanted to know what it was like, you were so excited, you'd still go back to those instructions. I remember doing that with Whizball. I bought Whizball, played it, went, what the hell? I have no idea what I'm doing. No idea. Went to the instructions, went, oh, that's what it is it? You know what I mean? So the instructions, I've always shown that I've read them, because I don't believe in going into a game without reading them. And sometimes the instructions can be so vague it doesn't help you. So I'm going to go with the fact that, yes, I like the concept. I would cross out the not reading the instructions part. That's all. It's just me, that is. No contradiction to how the guy's running his channel or anything. I think he's got a fantastic channel. In fact, go and have a look at that channel. It's GIHNP. You will be entertained. It's really fun. It's great to watch somebody not knowing what the hell he's doing, playing a game. It's just, I think the instructions should be something that's there. Even Robert's Retro Gaming plays a game without reading the instructions, but then will say, I'm going to put this on pause because I want to read something. And then he read it and he goes, right, now I know. And then he'll play the rest of the game and he's so much better at it. That's how it is. You could still do it in the games I have not played, and you could still do it without the instructions. But I think it's good that you have a halfway break and you go, I'm going to read the instructions now. And then go, right, this is how you play it, right? Is it? Okay. And I think it'd be better for it, but that's just me. Next game was Crazy Burger. Now, there's plenty of these channels. This is an announcement channel, and it said that on Friday, the release of the Commodore 64 Mini Black happened. A price of £89. It's still very good value, because one of the games that's on there, Sam's Journey, costs even now in the 20 quid barrier for the game, which unless you're pirating, which you shouldn't do, especially with some of these later titles and indie titles, you should buy. And I wholeheartedly believe that. And therefore, 89 quid minus the 20 quid makes that the price of what the C64 Mini is now, that was released, oh my God, 7-8 years ago now. It's scary when you think about that. But it's true. So I would have loved to have bought the C64 Black. I can't afford it. My money's gone. The stuff that's coming through at the moment, I refuse to cancel my pre-orders. But I have cancelled a number of them for reasons that I thought that I could get away with not having them. But in the majority of cases, the ones that I've kept are the ones I want. So that's why there was a big chunk of nothing and now a big chunk of stuff. And it's afforded because of the money I didn't spend in those times. And Christmas is going to be weird this year because there's nobody to buy a present for. I'll still get something from my mum, but it'll be perfume or something, and you know, there's nobody else to buy for. So again, money saved, and it's the only way I can do it. Then there was a video that came up in the week called from a channel called Spare the Repair. No, Spare Time Repair. Sorry. Spare Time Repair. And it's a guy that used to repair stuff, and he's now doing a YouTube channel where he does it in his spare time. And it was a high-end Denon CD player that needed attention. And somebody sent it to him. And I quite like these. This high-end Denon would have cost hundreds when it came out. And the reason I like them is because sometimes they'll open something up that's so engineered. You go, wow, back in the day they engineered that. And when you look at the stuff now, it's half empty. I mean, if I was to open up that amp down there, it'd be next to nothing in it, right? Back in the day, boards everywhere, cable ties, everything. Just because we've shrunk everything down and can do it a lot smaller. So, yeah, it was great. And he said himself, this machine is not very serviceable, but it's well engineered. And I couldn't agree more. This thing was a behemoth for engineering. You know, the way that the lens worked, which was not a small lens that went through a groove that just did that. It had a clamp. It came in at an angle. And so it read the disc at an angle, and it had to do it at the velocity that the disc was going. So the flywheel technology was different. The clamp was different. The PCBs were sandwiched. Great video. I learned an awful lot. Then there's Spare Time. Yeah. Space Time Jovian. That's right. I watched this because it came up with Star Trek. Right? So it came in my alert. But basically what it is, this guy had been told that there was an arcade place that was junking or getting rid of a Sega Star Trek arcade machine from the very late 70s, early 80s. And it was the sit-down console version, which I've never played on. I've only ever played on the upright. And he's doing a series, and he was just cleaning it up. So he went to pick it up, got it out, and then started to clean it. So he disassembled it, cleaned it with all this special cleaning stuff, a load of Star Trek dad jokes, like how many ears has Spock got, the left ear, a right ear, and a final front ear, all of that sort of stuff. Why a Starfleet uniform smelly? Because William Shatner. Dad jokes, right? It's fun, but my God, yeah, not great. But it was very interesting watching the restoration, and now he's cleaned it up. The next week, it's going to be the PCB boards themselves, and then the monitor, which is going to be huge. The video of that, and then the next announcement, which you're going to have to wait a week for. This week in retro to come, and that is Commodore Computer Museum announced, and it was the first announcement that came up on, I think it was Wednesday. The A1200 announcement was made. So the people that made the C64 Mini retro games have now finally announced what they call the A1200, which is a full-sized A1200. It will be the same sort of stuff that's in a Mini, a little board and everything, but it's got a full keyboard, and they finally gave some prices and what it had about it. So of course this thing's coming with, I think they said 25 games, full Travelator keyboard, comes with a mouse and a joypad, which is this same joypad that's here. I don't think you can see it because I can't stretch it. There, that joypad. It's the Commodore Amiga joypad. 25 games, of which some were announced. They were like Turrican, Defender of the Crown, Settlers 2, that sort of stuff. And they said that you can pre-order it from November the 10th, so not far away now. It's about 2 weeks, but it's not out to buy until June 2026. So it's months away. Where will I pre-order it November 10th? No. I haven't got the money. Will I buy it? Yes. I want a 1200. It's not the machine I would choose. My first Amiga was an A1000, and then I had an A2000, and I had an A4000. I did have an A600, but never a 1200, and I never had the A1500 or a 3000. So my nostalgia is either the A1000, the A2000, the A4000, or the A600. My A1000 was equivalent to an A500. I didn't need one. So I bought the A500 Mini because it brings back my Amiga memories. But I never had that machine. But I had the A1000, and I can think of that Mini being my A1000. Now, the A1200 is sort of like the A4000, but cut down. So, will I buy a full A1200 for 100? And by the way, it's 150 quid. Yeah, I think that's doable. Not too much of a price when you consider the Black Mini is 89 quid. It has no keyboard or anything like that on it, and just the games. 150 quid seems about reasonable for me. I'd have liked it to have been 100 quid, but I think that's something that's never going to happen. Even the A500 Mini was 90 quid, if I remember rightly, when it first came out. And I think the Spectrum was 100. So when you're talking about a 1200 with that keyboard, you look at, I would have liked it to have been no more than 120 quid, but it is what it is, 150 quid, and I've got till June to save up. I think that's doable. So that's what I watched on YouTube. That's the announcement. The A1200 full size is coming out, and the pre-order date November 10th. We move on to film, TV, and soundtrack, and as you know, this is stuff on YouTube from either friends or people I keep an eye on and watch because they're entertaining, right? So we've got Ian Hill, The Ramblings. Well, you know all about Ian Hill, The Ramblings. If you don't go and subscribe to him, I don't know what's up with you. Be quite honest. Jesus, right? Does so much. Movies, TV, magazines, episode reviews, Doctor Who, X-Files, top 5 films of any year, all of that sort of stuff. I mean, there is a ton. He loves the old grey whistle test, so he does some music as well. And he does a live with me. So another reason. Well, or not. Depends whether you're watching this and you're a fan. But what he did this week, top 5 war films between 1995 and 2005. All of those separate videos, right? You have to remember that. They're every day. Doctor Who Collection Season 13 unboxing, which I showed my Doctor Who box set to on his channel, because mine arrived on the Monday. He got his on the Friday. The lucky bastard. I mean, the lucky so-and-so. Doctor Who Greatest Show in the Galaxy review, which is, it means he's up to the Sylvester McCoy era. X-Files Season 5 Episode 2 review, and Live with Del Boy. So a lot for you to take in there every week. Something different. Definitely worth a watch. And then another essential one is Mondo Chelovic Movies to me, because we're heading to Halloween. You have to remember that. So he did his Curse of Frankenstein unboxing, and he did 55... Is it 55 Experiment Camp review by 88 Films. And I learn more about horror from him than probably anywhere else. Only the people that come in and watch us waffle on a Wednesday tell me more about horror than Mondo Chelovic does. So there you go. There's something for you to go and think about. Through the Lens. What a nice chap Josh is. And he does his reviews a bit like Barry Norman. I refer him to like the Barry Norman of YouTube. He did a thank you video because he reached his milestone of 500 subs. And I'm so happy for him. I think it's well deserved. Would I do a video of thank you at 500? Maybe, but it's going to be another couple of years before I get to that number. But I don't care. It's not about that. But I do recognise these thank yous as... if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't still be here type things. And it's well deserved in regards to Through the Lens. And then he did a review called WTF Was the Point of Animal Reviews. A film called Animal. I didn't know too much about this film, but I learned about it when I was watching it. WTF, I think you know what that is. What the yeah. Okay. Very nice that he abbreviated it. Probably would have been banned if he hadn't. So there's a couple of videos well worth your time to go and look at. Did you see that? Did For the Love of Horror Vlog, which was very entertaining. I watched it from a distance because I was looking after my mother. It's very difficult, but this is where I try and show my support. I thumbed it up and basically watched. Didn't comment or say anything. I couldn't really. It's with my mum. Jim Jam Movies did a nice video called My Journey on YouTube. He wanted to express what his journey on YouTube has been from the very start to where he is now. And it is a journey. These are good videos. I tend to find I'm not at that point where I do my journey yet. I'm still every week doing something, and each week I express how I've expanded upon where I'm at. And he also did a final installment of his network collection. So he started doing his network collection, episodes 1 and 2. He finally did number 3 and showed off his network stuff. And it's very interesting to see people's collections anyway. Dead jealous. Thank you very much, Jim Jam. Then you got Muckman-Movies, who did a tribute to legendary artist Drew Struzan, who was born in 1947 and ended in 2025. So a good lengthy run, but did some quintessential artwork for movie posters that many of us will have seen when we were queuing up for our pictures, because they were all in the window, you know, the advertisement boards as you were entering into the movie cinema. You'll probably be stunned at how many you recognised. This person was very prolific. And then, of course, I can't say I've seen it because it ain't happened yet. But I'll mention it again that Muckman and Ian Hill, the Ramblings, are doing a horror-related live broadcast tonight at 7 o'clock on Muckman-Movies website. So if that doesn't encourage you to go over there and subscribe now so that you can get the alert to tell you it's on, I don't know what won't. Because Muckman is a very nice, respected person with a wealth of knowledge. And it's going to be interesting to know what he considers the tropes of horror. And then we got Commode and Mayo's take, which is they did some reviews of Sketch, The Mastermind, Springsteen's film called Deliver Us From Nowhere, the box office top 10, and the review of Regretting You. Now, there's 4 films there, and each one I'd known nothing about. I don't think I've even seen a trailer for any of them. I might be wrong on that, because I saw Fantastic Four, and I can't think what the trailers were. So I'm going to say I haven't. And all of those reviews were classic, brilliant. And then GQ. I've been watching a lot of GQ. Now, that's a magazine that's got its own YouTube channel. And you'd wonder to yourself, why are you watching GQ? Well, they've done for a number of years now, actors break down their most iconic roles. And they sometimes have directors in. And they've had Ridley Scott, they've had Quentin Tarantino. And when it comes to actors, they've brought in Robert De Niro, Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, a number of prolific actors talking about their time on films and what they would have done differently or whatever. Absolutely fantastic. Brilliant. Just going to take a sip of water. And I need to get some more water, so I'm just going to pause it and get some. So I won't be a moment. So we're approaching the end, and I've got my new water, so you can see. And we get to Game and Tech YouTube, which is basically my friends that are on Discord and channels that I still watch and are friends and all of that sort of stuff. And we start off with Down the Rabbit Hole, and he's done a couple of videos. He's done Try and Exit his Top Gunner game on my little arcadey machine. And that was quite fun. There's a game called Top Gunner. It wasn't a game that I've ever seen in the arcades. I knew of it. And it ran really well. He's got these little mini sort of like arcade cabinet type things, and he's loaded the ROM on and played it, and it was quite fun to watch. And then there was a really fun one, which was something that I forgot all about, to be quite honest. Hasbro used to bring out these really, really nice models of Star Wars stuff, and they brought out a voice-controlled R2-D2. And he wanted to show off what it was like in 2002, this little R2-D2 unit, which is big enough to hold a can of soda and bring it to you, because it's got an arm that comes out of a little compartment. Very good. Great technology for 2002. You'd have been, elated at Christmas to get that, but it was bloody expensive. So that's Down the Rabbit Hole. Great guy over in Canada. And another Canada royalty is Robert's Retro Gaming. Royalty to Atari. My God, the man what he doesn't know about Atari ain't worth bloody mentioning. And of course, he plays other stuff as well, as shown by the fact that this is what I watched of his.
Dwarf Fortress Classic Episode 10, which, by the way, I really need to get into Dwarf Fortress, but how much time would I need to put into that? But I've watched so many of his videos, I probably could start it now without knowing too much. Minecraft Play, episode 165. I mean, 165 episodes, man, Jesus. C64 gameplay of Ghosts and Goblins, for which he wanted me to do a video on Ghosts and Goblins, and I am going to do it, but my mother's illness has taken me away. But Ghosts and Goblins is my all-time favourite arcade game, and I've mentioned it a million times. Well, a lot. Just where I saw Ghosts and Goblins, how I fell in love with it, and all the different versions I've played, all the way up to my last reiteration of Ghosts and Goblins, which would have been on the Switch, which I've got played on here as well. I've done a little video on that. But I'd love to do a full Ghosts and Goblins. I was getting quite good at it. I never turn around and say I'm a great game player, but that particular game I did put so much money in. I did manage to once put a coin in and get to the third stage before I lost a life. And that's hard to do in such a hard game as Ghosts and Goblins. Now, I fall into the same traps as anybody that's not played a game in years, or played different versions of it, is I lose the timings, what you're supposed to do at this particular stage, the tricks that goes on. But I still recognised in Ghosts and Goblins for that particular hardware, okay, the limitations, how many sprites can be on a screen at the time, and therefore how you can cheat the system. Do you know what I mean? It's not really cheating. It's your own knowledge that makes you aware about things. Like if you know that a Commodore 64 can only display 8 sprites on a screen, and unless they've used some trickery to raster interrupt the split the screen and put sprites on the screen, you knew that if 7 were on the screen, these sprites, then there's only one more that could come on, or whatever. And if your ship was made of 2 of them, then there could only be another 6, and that sort of stuff. And in the early days, that helped you, knowing that information. Of course, they got much cleverer later on, so doesn't always work. But you can follow the same logic with that with arcade machines. With Ghosts and Goblins, there is sections where you got these hot dog things that come down on the first level, and they fire downwards. And there's very little things that you need to blow up on the horizontal line. So you can speed run it. You can speed run it and kill the 2 plants that are coming up before you get to the end. And then when the end comes on, you tend to find those hot dogs are gone. They do sometimes stay on the screen, don't get me wrong. It's all down to how the scrolling and the sprites were managed, and whether they followed you along and all that sort of stuff. But what I'm trying to get at here, you could there's a little red devil on the C64 version. You have to hit it, I think, 2 or 3 times. If you just off where it's just off screen, when you come in, you can fire 2 shots and then move the scrolling. It would hit 2 before he's actually even moved, and you only got to hit him once more. So you could come back, turn on yourself, shoot him. Him going up and swooping down kills you, because you can only fire horizontally in that game. So these are the things you learn. And so, yeah, I need to do something like that. So he did C64 gameplay, Ghosts and Goblins. SNES gameplay, Miss Pac-Man. That was entertaining. I don't know if I remember. I had a lot of SNES games because I had that backup system. Forgot what it's called now. You stuck it on top of your SNES console. You attached a disk drive to it. You put 1 cartridge in the top, and basically you could then dump cartridge games to disk. So I had an awful lot of games. That actually got stolen. I lent it to somebody and then they moved away without telling me. So I lost that. But I had great fun with it. I'd had the machine 2.5, 3 years by the point that had been stolen, and I'd moved on to other consoles by then. So yeah, it was terrible to learn, but I went, oh well.
in the end. And then emulation has come along, so you think nothing of it now. But that was a lot of money to lose. And then he played Atari 8-bit games, Chicken, Collision Course, Bilbo, of which Chicken I recognise. The other two I've learned. So that's brilliant. So definitely worth a watch. I'm not worthy. Robert, I'm not worthy. And yeah, tons of stuff coming out from him. Keeps me entertained every morning. Then you got Steve's Gaming Part 2, who did his Home Soft disc. Disc number 82. Always a great fun to watch. Goes down the list, plays each one for as long as he seems fit, for whether it fits into his I like it or oh my god, no, not for me category. Always fun. Obviously, with things going on with his life, he sometimes can't bring out 3-4 a week. You know, it's like me. I did one, he did one. I'm not going to contradict or say anything about that, because where's my stuff then? But it's how entertaining it is, and that's the thing. For me, one video a week, or every 2 weeks, as long as it's entertaining, love it. I'm watching it. Simple as that. Moving on, so salute, my friend, and I've got to think of a game for you. Yeah. Wonder if I'm going to choose a nice one or a nasty one. I'll let you ponder that. And there's my segue into Colin Jones, a.k.a. Ponder. See what I did there? Anyway, he did his Mainmeister High Score Kerfuffle VS Balloon Fight, which I've played. I could have actually joined in on that one. Because he asked me to play that as a friend's game. You know, friends suggest games for me to play. Could have done that. And he did his Vlog, episode 94, with a Halloween theme. But he was talking about his trip to Blackpool, and that was great. And I got to learn an awful lot about the hotel he was staying at, where he was at the expo that he went up there to see, which was a retro sort of gaming event. Brilliant. And lastly, well, not lastly, because the last one is somebody else, Seb's Place. So, oh, by the way, Colin Jones, aka Ponder, he's got 2 channels. Go and watch those. I always put the links in my description. Seb's Place is every SNES Powel game played. This time the letter R for Richard. So he's getting quite far now towards the end, although S is going to be massive here. He's going to have to split that up if we're talking about the SNES, because everything was called Super something or other, right? The nice thing about those is that I do get to see some games I might not have seen, although I'm unsure if he reviews everything that's out there, because he did one that I swear was an arcade game that you only played with a gun, and he was saying how awkward it was to play with the controller. But the SNES had a Super Scope gun, and it had a handgun, light gun, and I wonder if it was compatible with that light gun. I've not looked, but I would definitely mark it up for the playability of that particular game if it had the handgun, or you could buy it as a separate system, because you try playing Operation Wolf with a joystick, it's bloody awful, right? Or not particularly intuitive. Play it with a gun, different. And that's why on the Amiga, when we had a mouse, we just sort of like sailed through it, because it was like the gun, really. And of course, we got Mainmeister, who's just come back from holidays, having a bad time. I learnt very, very late, and I do apologise to you, Alan, at this point, that I didn't know about what went on in your life this week. It's always sad to lose something in your family, and I know how much your little dog Archie was. You talked about Archie when we met in London. You talked about your little dog Archie when you were down here to go to the Zap event, which I remember fondly. And I could only imagine what it was like. But I can't just imagine. I had to put my cat, Rigsby, of 13 years down. And for a week, I just couldn't stop being emotional. That cat was all over me, followed me, everything. And they get under your skin. And I had to take one day off work. I remember the day after I couldn't go into work. I went, I can't go into work. Still thinking of Rigsby now. And it's good because the probation service recognised it as a death in the family and gave me that day. It's nice. Don't have to do that for animals, you see, really. But that's why I give sort of like the Ministry of Justice and the probation service a bit of slack, because they do an awful lot of things like that. But undeterred, he's done his waffle, and there's a possibility he'll do his stream tonight. I'll be sort of like looking after my mum, and it'll be very difficult to support two very important people in my life, Ian and Mainmeister, but I will try and jump in and out. But I can't do it with two phones while I'm looking after my mum. It doesn't work. Yeah, I could do it if I was in here and I had the PC and a phone, right? But it doesn't work very well when you're looking after your mum. So I'm going to give my support to you now, Alan, and say I hope from now on you've had your free bad lucks, and everything from now on is plain sailing. You've got so much to look forward to, much more than me, Alan. So think about that. Hold on to that. And I wish you well. And that's the end of the paper part of the blog. And we move to what's arrived, really. So I'll go to overhead cam if it's on. I haven't tested it, to be honest. Oh, it is on. That's great. Now, this one you saw last week, but actually it's not the same one. This one is from America. This is the Fantastic Four steelbook that comes from America. But if you look, you'll see you get a Blu-ray with it and a digital code. But you also get a collectible magnet front steelbook. You get a Fantastic Four First Steps in a comic format and some collector's cards. And I got that in a sale. So I had that delivered from America, and I'm glad I did, because that's the sort of collector I am. It's Marvel and there's a comic in there, so of course it was one that I had to get. This is one as well that everybody's been talking about. It's called Weapons. You can't really see the title of it because of the sticker, because you can see where I bought it from. But Weapons is a really, really good film. One of the top films of this year. I'm putting it on the screen. I don't know whether you'll be able to read the text, but it is a mystery sort of thing. There's a school and all the kids disappear at the same time except one little boy, and it's told from the perspective of the adults. I think it's 3 or 4 views. This is the film that came out last year at this year as summer with the same time as Fantastic Four. It's the Superman film. Again, this is from HMV. You can't see this, but it's in a cellophane slipcover with the Superman Fortress of Solitude on the steelbook behind it. So when you slip that cover off, it's different. You can probably make it out because this is the slipcover look, and this behind it's the steelbook. You can probably just make that out if I tilt it. So it's quite a nice steelbook. That's quite nice. I've seen that sort of thing before. DC are in the press this week in regards to the fact that a couple of companies want to buy them out, and so DC's superhero films are up in the air, and it definitely in regards to whether they're going to be making any more Superman films. I hope they do. Then we've got my steelbook upgrade of Clue. I love the film Clue. I think it's a great film. It's just one of my favourites. So it's the 40th anniversary. So I was glad to get that. Another favourite of mine is the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I've been to the cinema to see that. I've been to the theatre to see that. And I've dressed up as Frankenfurter while going to the theatre to do that. And no, I will not be showing the pictures. Me in fishnet stockings and that do not go very well. And a basque. So that will not be shown. But I've this anniversary edition. It's the 50th. Wow. Of that. It's great. This I haven't seen, but I'm looking forward to, which is Speak No Evil. Heard good stuff about this. Quite a nice steelbook. Not particularly exciting, is it? I mean, matte. But still great. And my most exciting one, the one that I can't wait to watch today after I've done this and I've seen the Formula One, The Quick and the Dead steelbook. I do have a 4K of this from a couple of years ago, but I haven't got a steelbook of it. It is one of my favourite westerns. It's a Sam Raimi directed film. It's got very early Leonardo DiCaprio and Russell Crowe in it. Gene Hackman steals the show. Sharon Stone holds her own. And the camera effects in it remind me so much of Leone and his tight camera angles on eyes and so forth. It's a great story film as well about a contest held in a small American settlement where it's overseen by this dictator of Gene Hackman, who only allows them to live because he wants them to live. Otherwise, they're dead. And this contest draws him in because he's part of it, the contest. So a great film, Quick and the Dead. And this one is just a Blu-ray that I pre-ordered because of my good friend who told me about this company that puts albums onto Blu-ray and remasters them in 5.1 audio, Dolby Digital Audio. It's called SDE, the company, and it's the Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy in Dolby Atmos 5.1 stereo sound. Comes with a slip cover, high fidelity audio. You'll think to yourself, why bother? It's Elton John. So that answers that. And I will switch back to the camera and go, thanks very much for watching. I didn't think it was going to be as long as it was because there weren't that many shout outs and comments. But hey, a lot of memories portrayed in there, and that aids with my diary and the youngsters that'll watch this when I'm gone, which is who it's for, which is my nephew and niece. So with that, I'm going to say salute. Thanks very much for watching. I'll hopefully bring some more content out. I've already put one out, which was my challenge from Steve. He'll be challenging me shortly. Hopefully, should I say. And yes, I'm doing some stuff on Steam. And I will be hopefully doing a series with Rocket Bunny. Well, maybe. So watch this space. It'll either be out or it'll be just where we play together. So there'll definitely be more content coming out from me as the weeks go on. And I thank you for your patience. Salute. Have a great rest of your weekend. Have a great week. That's the important thing. Till next time. Bye-bye.